Clint Eastwood was in the middle of the most important scene of the film when the producer walked onto the set. The year was 1976. The movie was The Outlaw. Josie Wales. Clint wasn't just starring in it, he was directing it too. And the scene they were shooting was the emotional heart of the entire story. Josie Wales, the character Clint played, was standing over the graves of his wife and son. They had been murdered by Union soldiers during the Civil War. This was the moment that explained everything: why Josie became an outlaw, why he sought revenge, why he couldn't let go of the past. Clint had rehearsed this scene in his head for weeks. He knew exactly how he wanted to play it: the silence, the stillness, the grief that couldn't be expressed in words. "Cut," he said quietly. "Let's go again. I want to try something different with the approach." The crew began resetting. The camera operator adjusted his position. The sound technician checked his levels. That's when the door at the back of the soundstage slammed open. Robert Daly, the executive producer from Warner Brothers, marched onto the set like he owned the place. Which, technically, he did. "Clint," Daly called out, his voice echoing across the silent stage. "We need to talk, now." Clint didn't turn around. He kept his eyes on the fake graves in front of him, staying in character, trying to hold on to the emotion he had built up. "I'm in the middle of something, Bob. This can't wait." Clint finally turned. His face was calm, but anyone who knew him could see the tension in his jaw. "Then make it quick." Daly was a short man with expensive suits and a permanent frown. He had been a thorn in Clint's side since the first day of production. He didn't understand filmmaking. He understood spreadsheets. "We're 3 days behind schedule," Daly announced, loud enough for the entire crew to hear. "The studio is getting nervous. I need you to pick up the pace." Clint stared at him. "We're behind because the weather was bad last week. We lost 2 outdoor shooting days. That's not something I can control. I don't care about excuses. I care about results. This scene you're doing right now, it's taking too long. You've done 6 takes already. I'll do as many takes as I need to get it right." "No." Daly stepped closer, lowering his voice but keeping it firm. "You'll do 2 more takes, maximum. Then we move on to the next setup. We need to make up time." The crew had stopped working. Everyone was watching now: the grips, the electricians, the makeup artists. They had never seen anyone talk to Clint Eastwood like this. Clint's expression didn't change. His voice stayed level. "Bob, I'm going to explain something to you once. This scene is the reason audiences will care about Josie Wales. If I rush it, the whole movie falls apart. I don't care about the schedule. I care about making a good film. The studio will get their movie. But they'll get it my way. Or they won't get it at all." Daly's face turned red. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm telling you how this works. Now get off my set. I have a scene to shoot." Daly didn't leave. Instead, he did something that shocked everyone watching. He turned to the crew and raised his voice. "Listen up, everyone. I'm the producer on this picture. That means I control the budget. I control the schedule. And I'm telling you right now, we wrap this scene in 30 minutes. Or I start making calls about shutting down production." Silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Clint stood absolutely still. His eyes never left Daly's face. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the lights overhead. Then Clint smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a man who had just made a decision. "You want to make calls?" Clint said. "Go ahead. Use the phone in my trailer. But before you do, let me tell you what's going to happen next." He took a step toward Daly. Then another. The producer backed up without realizing he was doing it. "You're going to call the studio. You're going to tell them I'm being difficult. And you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, 'Work it out,' because they know something you don't." "What's that?" "I don't need this movie. I've made enough money to retire 10 times over. I'm doing this because I love the story. If you push me too hard, I walk. And if I walk, you have no film. No star, no director. You have nothing but a pile of exposed film and 100 crew members standing around with no one to tell them what to do. Daly's face went from red to white. You wouldn't. Try me. The crew watched in disbelief. No one in Hollywood talked to studio executives this way. The studios had all the power. They controlled the money, the distribution, the marketing. Actors and directors were replaceable. The system was designed to remind everyone of that fact every single day. But Clint Eastwood wasn't everyone. He had spent 20 years building his career. He had started at the bottom, doing bit parts in movies no one remembered. He had taken a chance on Italian westerns when Hollywood wouldn't give him serious roles. He had turned himself into one of the biggest stars in the world through sheer determination and talent. Now he was using that power for something he believed in. Here's what's going to happen, Clint said to Daly. You're going to walk off this set. You're going to go back to your office. And you're not going to come back until I invite you. When the movie is finished, you'll see it with everyone else at the premiere. You can't ban me from my own production. I just did. Clint turned to his assistant director. If Mr. Daly tries to enter this soundstage again, don't let him in. Call security if you have to. The assistant director looked terrified. He nodded anyway. Daly sputtered. This is outrageous. I'm going to call Frank Wells. I'm going to call the board. I'm going to call whoever you want. Clint turned his back on the producer and walked toward the camera. We're shooting scene 47. Everyone to their positions. For a moment, Daly stood frozen. He looked around the set, searching for an ally, someone who would back him up. No one moved. Finally, with his face twisted in humiliation and rage, the producer stormed off the set. The heavy door slammed behind him. The soundstage was silent. Then Clint spoke, his voice calm and professional. Reset the lights. Let's go from the top. For the next 3 hours, Clint worked on the grave scene. He did 12 more takes. Each one was slightly different, a pause here, a gesture there. He was searching for something specific, a moment of truth that would make the audience feel Josie Wales's pain. The crew watched in awe. They had seen plenty of directors' work, but Clint was different. He didn't yell. He didn't throw tantrums. He simply focused on the work with an intensity that was almost frightening. Between takes, he consulted with the cinematographer about the lighting. He talked to the sound mixer about the ambient noise. He gave notes to the script supervisor about continuity. No one mentioned Daly. No one talked about the confrontation. It was as if the producer had never existed. At 7 p.m., Clint finally called it. That's a wrap for today. Good work, everyone. Same time tomorrow. The crew began packing up equipment. Clint walked to his trailer alone. He knew the fight wasn't over. Daly would make calls. The studio would get involved. There would be meetings, negotiations, threats. But Clint had made his point. He had shown everyone on that set, and everyone who would hear about it later, that he wouldn't be pushed around. That some things mattered more than schedules and budgets. He sat in his trailer and poured himself a whiskey. He didn't drink often, but tonight he needed it. The phone rang. It was going to be a long night. Frank Wells, the president of Warner Brothers, was on the other end of the line. Clint, I heard what happened today. I figured you would. Bob Daly is in my office right now. He wants me to shut down production and replace you as director. Clint took a sip of whiskey. And what do you want to do? There was a pause on the other end. When Wells spoke again, his voice was careful. I want to make a good movie. I want to protect my investment. And I want to keep my biggest star happy. Then tell Daly to stay away from my set. It's not that simple, Clint. Bob has friends on the board. He's been with the studio for 15 years. I can't just override him without consequences. What kind of consequences? The kind that make my job difficult. Wells sighed. Look, I'm on your side here. I've seen the dailies. The footage is incredible. You're making something special, but I need you to meet me halfway. What does that mean? It means I need you to at least pretend to care about the schedule. Give me something I can show the board. A gesture of good faith. Clint was silent for a long moment. He understood the game Wells was playing. Studios were political organizations. Everyone had to cover their backs. Wells was asking for a fig leaf, something that would let him protect Clint without making himself vulnerable. "Fine," Clint said finally. "I'll make up 2 days by the end of the week. But Daly stays off my set. That's non-negotiable. I'll talk to him." "Don't talk to him. Tell him. If I see his face on my soundstage again, I walk. And this time I mean it." Wells was quiet for a moment. Then, "Understood. I'll handle it." The line went dead. The next morning, Robert Daly was removed from the production. Officially, he was reassigned to other projects. Unofficially, everyone in Hollywood knew what had really happened. Clint Eastwood had won. The news spread through the industry like wildfire. Actors talked about it at parties. Directors discussed it on other sets. Studio executives whispered about it in boardrooms. Someone had finally stood up to the bean counters. Someone had finally said, no. For the crew of the outlaw Josie Wales, the change was immediate. Without Daly breathing down their necks, the atmosphere on set became calmer, more creative. People took pride in their work again, instead of just trying to survive until wrap. Clint noticed the difference immediately. The work improved. The performances got better. The movie started coming together in ways he hadn't expected, but he also knew there would be a price to pay. Hollywood had a long memory. The studios didn't forget when someone challenged their authority. There would be consequences down the road, projects that mysteriously fell through, budgets that got cut, opportunities that disappeared. Clint didn't care. He had made his choice. He would rather make one great movie than a dozen mediocre ones. He would rather fight for what he believed in than compromise his vision for the sake of politics. That's what separated the artists from the employees. 2 weeks later, Clint finally got the grave scene exactly right. It happened on take 23. Everything aligned perfectly. The lighting, the sound, the performance. Josie Wales stood over the graves of his family, and for 2 minutes, no one on set breathed. Clint didn't speak a single word. He didn't need to. His face told the whole story, the grief, the rage, the hollow emptiness of a man who had lost everything. When he finally called cut, the crew broke into spontaneous applause. It wasn't something that happened often on film sets, but everyone knew they had witnessed something special. Clint nodded once, acknowledging the moment, then immediately moved on to the next setup. There was still work to do, but inside, he felt something he rarely allowed himself to feel: pride. Not the kind of pride that comes from fame or money or awards. The quiet pride of knowing you had done your best work, of knowing you had fought for something and won. The grave scene would become one of the most memorable moments in the finished film. Critics would praise it. Audiences would cry. It would be studied in film schools for decades, and it almost never happened. If Clint had listened to Daly, if he had rushed through the scene in 30 minutes like the producer demanded, it would have been forgettable. Just another moment in another Western. Instead, it became art. That was the real lesson. Not just about filmmaking, but about life. If you weren't willing to lose everything for what you believed in, you didn't really believe in it. Clint had been willing to lose the movie. He had been willing to lose his reputation, his relationship with the studio, his future projects. He had put everything on the line because he knew with absolute certainty that the scene mattered. That kind of conviction was rare. Most people never found it. They went through life compromising, settling, accepting less than they deserved. Clint refused to be one of those people. The Outlaw Josie Wales was released in June 1976. It was a massive success. Audiences loved it. Critics praised it. It became one of the defining westerns of the decade. The grave scene that Daly had wanted to rush became the emotional centerpiece of the film. Reviewers specifically mentioned it as an example of Clint's growth as an actor and filmmaker. No one mentioned Robert Daly. His name appeared nowhere in the reviews, nowhere in the publicity, nowhere in the conversations about the film's success. That was the final irony. Daly had been so concerned with schedules and budgets that he had almost destroyed the one thing that made the movie special. If Clint had listened to him, the outlaw Josie Wales would have been forgotten. Instead, it became a classic. Clint went on to make dozens more films as a director. He won Academy Awards. He became one of the most respected filmmakers in Hollywood history, and he never forgot the lesson of that day on the set. "The only person who can protect your vision is you," he would say. "No one else cares as much as you do. No one else will fight for it like you will. If you give that power away, if you let someone else make the decisions, you'll never make anything worth remembering." Decades later, the story of Clint shutting down the set became legend in Hollywood. Young directors would hear about it from their mentors. Actors would reference it when negotiating with studios. It became a symbol of artistic integrity, proof that it was possible to stand up to the system and win. But Clint never saw it that way. "I wasn't trying to make a statement," he said in a rare interview about the incident. "I was just trying to make a good movie. The producer was getting in the way, so I removed him." It wasn't complicated. That simplicity was what made Clint different from other Hollywood stars. He didn't play games. He didn't engage in political maneuvering. He just did his work and expected everyone else to do theirs. When they didn't, when they prioritized the wrong things, when they forgot why they were there, Clint had no patience. He would give one warning, maybe two, then he would act. It wasn't about ego. It wasn't about power. It was about standards. Clint believed that if you were going to do something, you should do it right. Anything less was a waste of everyone's time. That philosophy guided his entire career. Every film he directed, every performance he gave, every decision he made, it all came back to the same principle. Do the work. Do it well. Don't let anyone stop you. There's a story that circulates in Hollywood about what happened to Robert Daly after he was removed from the outlaw Josie Wales. Some say he was quietly pushed out of Warner Brothers within a year. Others say he lasted longer, but was never given another major production. A few claim he eventually left the industry entirely, unable to recover from the humiliation of being defeated by an actor. The truth is less dramatic. Daly continued working for several more years, producing smaller films, slowly fading into obscurity. He died in the 1990s, remembered by almost no one. Clint Eastwood, meanwhile, became a cultural icon. He kept making films into his 90s. He kept fighting for his vision. He kept standing up for what he believed in. When asked about the incident in his later years, Clint would just shrug. "Some people understand what matters. Some people don't. I didn't have time to explain it to everyone. I had a movie to make." That was the final word on the subject. Not a speech about artistic integrity, not a lecture about standing up to authority, just a simple statement of fact. Clint had a movie to make, and no one, not a producer, not a studio, not the entire Hollywood system, was going to stop him from making it right. If you watch The Outlaw Josie Wales today, the grave scene still holds up. Nearly 50 years after it was filmed, it remains one of the most powerful moments in any Western ever made. Clint stands alone in the frame, looking down at the simple wooden crosses. His face shows nothing and everything at the same time. There's no dialogue, no music, just a man confronting the worst moment of his life. And somewhere, in that silence, you can feel the weight of what it cost to create it. The endless takes, the confrontation with the producer, the phone calls and the politics, and the threats. None of that appears on screen. All you see is the result, a perfect moment of cinema that will be watched and studied and admired for as long as people watch movies. That's what Clint was fighting for. Not his ego, not his reputation, not his power over the studio. He was fighting for that moment, for those 2 minutes of truth that would outlast everyone involved in making them. The producer wanted to rush through it in 30 minutes. Clint shut down the entire set, and because he did, the moment lives forever.